Welcome, OTG fans, to another playoff edition of the NBA Outlet, presented by OTG Basketball. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm your co-host, Nick Fay. With me today, OTG writer, Kory Waldron. What's up, Kory?
Nick, how you doing? I'm glad to be on another edition of the OTG podcast for these playoffs. I'm excited to start talking some hoops.
Yeah, a lot to talk about. The second round has started. We've seen game ones from all four series, so let's get right into it. We'll talk Washington, Boston. This series has been great. I haven't really wanted to miss a minute of it. Last night, Isiah Thomas dropped 53 points and got the win in overtime for Boston. Initial thoughts from that game?
The grit and the determination by Boston is pretty much what this team is. When Boston is playing at their best, they play with that chip on their shoulder, and it really all comes from their leader. The final pick in the draft a couple years ago, traded off the Kings, traded off the Suns, kind of looked like he might not even have an NBA career, and now he's the star of the Celtics and an MVP candidate to a degree. Isiah Thomas is just the heart and soul of this Boston Celtics team right now. It's incredible to watch, especially with all the tragedy with his sister and everything going on in his personal life.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned the personal life stuff, and that is just terrible. But then also he got his front tooth knocked out in game one, and he had to deal with that. I don't know if you saw in the press conference. The day after the game, he was in the hospital for like 5 to 6 hours. And then the day of the game, he had to go back to the hospital because the swelling was so bad. So, like he said, he was going to play regardless because it was his sister's birthday. But, there was still some question if he could come and play, and he dropped 53 points. And he's really, I think, the key to the series for both teams. Offensively for the Celtics, he's their offense. 53 points says it all. Defensively, when they're able to hide him on defense, that's when they're the most effective. When he has to guard John Wall or Bradley Beal and they have to help him every time, Wall and Beal are able to just kill them, especially Wall. Early in that first quarter, they had Isiah Thomas on him, and they would double him with Al Horford and just led to easy layups for Gortat. So what they do with him on defense is just as important what he does on offense.
Yeah, another thing, you mentioned how Isiah had the mouth, put his tooth back in. He also fell last night early on in the game and landed pretty much on his mouth. You can see him playing with his tooth and everything. So just like the mouth pain he had and all of the adversity, and he still came out. And like you said, and also Isiah Thomas isn't a good defender, as we know. He's 5'9". It's very hard to be a good defender in the NBA at that height. But it seems like when he needs to play defense, he makes the big plays needed. Like in the fourth quarter, he had a couple big-time steals that really helped Boston get back in that game to seal an overtime. And it's just like, he hides well, but when he needs to make a big play, he seems to be in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, and you're right. He does have the ability, get in the passing lane. He's a quick player. He has quick hands too. And I thought one issue was where they're able to hide him late in that game is Markieff Morris. When Markieff Morris is on the floor, they had to play IT on either Otto Porter, Beal, or Wall. But when Morris is out, they went with Oubre Jr. and they put IT on Oubre Jr., and he's not really a confident player, only being in his second year and not really have ball handling skills. So that gives him a real ability to hide him. Oubre is only really a threat from three. So
yeah, I agree. And Morris now is that I like what Morris does for that team, especially when he's on the field, on the court, I should say, because he really is for Washington kind of their enforcer. He's their guy who roughs up the other team, and I feel like last night you could definitely tell his ankle is not 100%. I feel like he had a very poor game.
He still, put up a good amount of points though, and that, that's something they need. But no, I agree. He definitely brings that toughness and that edge for the team. He's that little energy boost they need, and I think he kind of knows it too, because he'll randomly just start talking shit to somebody in their team even over nothing. So I think he knows that it's his role, but he needs to really stay out of foul trouble. I think he leads the NBA playoffs in fouls.
Yeah, you got to be on the court to have an impact.
And we'll just touch on John Wall a little bit. It's Wall has been crazy this series, and it's the rest of his team needs to step up, and they haven't really had an answer for him.
Yeah, he's got to be one of the most. I was watching last night, obviously, and every time I watch Wall play, I feel like I see new people giving him praise. He's got to be one of the most underrated stars in the NBA.
Yeah, for sure.
He's really he's got to in my eyes, he's a top 5 point guard. You could arguably put him in the top 3 behind Westbrook and Curry. Just he impacts the floor on everything. He plays solid defense. He's very aggressive in the passing lanes and getting steals. He's becoming a chase down block artist to a degree. He pushes the tempo. He's starting to shoot. I think he's 12 for 24 from three so far in the playoffs or the last 4 games or whatever. He's really becoming a complete player. And if his jump shot ever becomes very consistent, then watch out for John Wall.
Yeah, and John Wall has the effect, like I mentioned in the last podcast, is like he gets the ball and he's at a certain point where there's really nothing you can do but foul him when he's at the rim because he's so fast and athletic. And he just has that extra edge. And it's just nice to always see when he turns a made basket into an easy 2 points for the Wizards.
And, of course, you can't knock the facilitating purposes either. Without John Wall, there's really not a playmaker. I mean, I know Bradley Beal isn't an awful playmaker, but there's at times where he just becomes, very locked into trying to score. I think he was 4 for tonight. And, Jennings can't really score offensively, but he's a decent playmaker. They really need Wall to be at the kind of level he was last night because, I mean, arguably Washington should have won last night's game if it wasn't for Isiah Thomas's fourth quarter and OT heroics.
Yeah, and Washington also made some mistakes down the stretch, but you're right. Wall does everything for that team. He ignites the offense, and he's really to stop him off the pick and roll, it takes so much attention from the other team, which always seems to set up Washington for easy buckets. And, a lot of these guys are getting good shots, and some of them aren't hitting them. But you mentioned Bradley Beal. I want to talk about him a little bit, and he's just been inconsistent, and he kind of falls off in the game sometimes where he forgets he's there, or he just does stupid things, or it's just like Beal needs to play smarter, be more aggressive, be more consistent, and bring the same edge all the time. He seems to get aggravated by hard fouls, injuries, or calls that he doesn't get, slow to get up. And then he always has that look on his face, and then he kind of falls out of the game.
Yeah, I mean, for Beal, he played 47 minutes last night. So did Wall. And you could really tell late in the fourth that they were just exhausted. They didn't have much legs left.
Even on the last shot by both of them, you could tell it was partially the legs.
Yeah, but like you said, Wall, I feel like Beal's issue is he just doesn't seem to play very well on the road. I feel like he's one of those players who you can just tell there's a night and day difference between when he's in Washington and when they're on the road. Because what was he last night? I think he was 1 for 9 from 3, and they weren't even awful looks. He just wasn't getting them to fall. I'm not really concerned about Beal, but for sure, when you have Otto Porter Jr. struggling as well, and Bradley Beal struggling, it doesn't bode well for the Warriors. It doesn't bode well for the Wizards to try and keep up with a team who's very defensive like Boston in close games.
Yeah, exactly. I think you hit it right on the head. Is the home and road difference, his demeanor. You can just kind of see his attitude difference on playing at home or on the road. And when you play a team like Boston, who's physical and gets into you, they've been kind of able to get him out of the game.
A prime example. I know these are regular season stats, but in the regular season, the Wizards were 19 and 22 on the road. And when you have a losing record on the road and you still finish 49 and 33, it kind of shows you what kind of team you are. Out of those 33 losses, 22 were on the road. So they're clearly a home favorite team, which is why I think this series, there's no need for Washington to panic yet because the playoffs don't start until you lose at home. So as long as they take care of home court, they'll be okay, just like in the Atlanta Hawks series the round before. They won 2 at home, they lost 2 on the road, and they still won the series.
Yeah, that's what I was going to point to, too, is the Hawks series is a perfect example. That's a series they probably could have finished even quicker had they played better on the road. So I think going home, like you said, obviously there is some pressure to win 2 straight. If they won this game last night like they should have, they would have been in really good shape. But now, Boston just has to steal 1 on the road.
Surely makes life a lot easier for Boston.
Exactly, and they could even lose the next 2, and they're still, in pretty good shape because they have 2 home games.
Yeah, so. And it's funny because I've been pretty critical of Boston since the playoffs start. Because I honestly believe the Wizards would be more of a struggle for the Cavs and the Celtics, just because the Celtics have the issue with rebounding, which for me is even last night they lost a rebounding battle by 3. And there's the scoring. Besides Isiah Thomas, Bradley hasn't looked very good since he came back from the ankle injury late in the season. Jay Crowder has been very inconsistent. There's a lot of holes in Boston that they're just lacking that star that they really need to get over the hump.
Yeah, I think Washington would provide a better challenge for the Cavs too, just because of John Wall and what he can kind of do in a series by himself. enough about that series. We had another game last night, Golden State and Utah. And, this one kind of went as you would expect it. The Warriors were in control the whole game. The Jazz were kind of outmatched, and the Warriors just did their thing with their well-rounded attack.
Yeah, it was one of those games where it felt like it was constantly on the cusp of a blowout. But then every time you looked up, the Jazz were pretty much down by around 12 points, which is what they ended up losing by. Obviously, Golden State dominated that game from start to finish. They completely took out Gordon Hayward last night. George Hill struggled against a big-time point guard, which is nothing new to me. Joe Johnson wasn't ISO Joe that we've seen the series before. Gobert was okay. But, the Jazz, they can't play at the tempo they played at last night. You can't go into Oracle and try and play the Warriors' tempo. It just doesn't work. With guys like Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond, those guys want to get out and run. And when you're sloppy with the basketball and you're turning the ball over, you're just feeding Golden State and you're just giving them what they want.
Exactly. And, Utah doesn't really have the talent offensively to match them. Not many teams in the league do. So it's just like, you guys really need to slow down the pace. And you mentioned it. Hayward struggled. I think he was 4 of 15. And the Warriors, on the other hand, they had 4 guys, I think, with over 15 points. They only had 7 turnovers. I think it was a franchise record. So a lot of good stuff. Draymond Green has been a monster for them. It's tough to see the Jazz really have much success in the series. What is your prediction on this series?
See, I originally said Warriors in 6. I'm leaning now towards 5, maybe a sweep, because I just Gordon Hayward it's not a good matchup for him against Kevin Durant. Curry's too fast for George Hill. There's just a lot of the speed issues. Honestly, the Warriors are just so much quicker. And Kevin Durant, he's still not even back to Kevin Durant form. He isn't shooting as well as we've seen him shoot when he's at the best of his, top of his game. This series to me looks like it's going to be over in 5.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with is 5. Just because, like you said, they just have so many negative matchups. Everything's in favor of the Warriors, and the Warriors aren't even fully clicking. As we know, Steve Kerr is still out. One of our OTG writers, Teo, has wrote a great article about how the Warriors are kind of able to handle that. Ron Adams is a great defensive mind. Mike Brown has experience. So I think they're in a good spot, and it's kind of giving the Warriors a little bit like another test to kind of keep them busy and interested, and it's going to help them, I think, in the long run.
And it's another good thing, too, for Mike Brown. It definitely takes the pressure off him when the Warriors play like they did last night. Because there's not very much coaching that needs to go into it besides substitutions when your team is dominating like they were last night.
Exactly. I mean, his job is pretty easy, too, when you have the players that they do have.
And another thing to look out for would be Curry tweaking his ankle. I know he came back out and played 2 possessions, but then he went back out. So something to monitor would be to see how serious the tweak was of his ankle.
Yeah, and like we said, we think this series will be kind of short, so any type of injury for the Warriors would not be good, but the positive would be they'd have some extra rest. But on to the next series, the game that's going to be on tonight, Cleveland and Toronto. What did you see out of this series in Game 1, other than King James dominating?
I see a team in Toronto that I think just they it's one of those things. All right, let me bring up a reference. So when I go to a park and I play basketball against kids who are clearly better than me, sometimes when you get into a game, the other team is better than you, and you kind of play with the wrong mindset at first. That's how Toronto looks to me against Cleveland. It looks like they know they're outmatched, so they kind of just go through the motions as if they don't have a chance of winning. That's just what Game 1 looked like to me. It looked like a team that already looked a bit defeated playing.
Yeah, no, and I've heard that from others as well, commenting on that, because the Raptors just came out with terrible energy in that game. They're just I don't know. Part of it is probably they think they can't beat the Cavs. I think part of it too is they're just a bad playoff team. It's just every series, every Game 1, they come out terrible. It's coaching wise, you need to get your team prepared, and the leadership on that team needs to make sure that these guys come out and play hard in the beginning of the game. And in Game 1, it seems like every Game 1 they're just getting killed.
You know what it is too, Nick? It's the fact that in the regular season they were getting to the free throw line. They just don't get to the free throw line. Last game, DeRozan and Lowry got to the free throw line a combined 9 times. They didn't miss a free throw, but Ibaka didn't shoot a single free throw. Carroll didn't shoot a free throw. Valanciunas didn't shoot a free throw. Tucker didn't shoot a free throw. Like your big guys didn't get to the line. And Toronto has always been a good team at scoring a majority of their points from the line and playing that kind of aggressive, tenacious defense. And they just haven't had that.
And it's kind of like, it's interesting too, is because in the series, it's not like Cleveland has a great rim protector. Nobody in that team's like, oh my God, like super shot blocker in there. So you think they'd be able to get more points inside, but they haven't. I think Lowry and DeRozan just need to step up. If the Raptors are going to have any type of chance in the series, they both need to have, huge stat lines, points, assists, rebounds, everything, playing defense. And if they don't, then the Raptors have no chance.
Yeah, and actually, Lowry last game, I'm pretty sure he had a double-double. I want to say he had 11 assists, but he had a pretty good game for majority of the first half. I know in the second half he wasn't as aggressive, but really the life of this team is DeRozan. I know
I would think, to be honest, DeRozan will probably need to average like around 30. Lowry probably in like the mid-20s and 10+ assists for the Raptors to even have a chance, and that's probably to even push 6 games.
Yeah, and I like how much they use Ibaka and how they've been using that small ball lineup and having Ibaka play center. Ibaka only had 6 rebounds last game though, and I understand that he's now the prototypical stretch 4, stretch 5 kind of player because he can hit threes. But the Raptors really need to win the battle on the boards. You can't afford to let Cleveland get rebounds or second chance rebounds, which is what they're so good at, especially with Tristan Thompson.
Yeah, it's like Jonas Valanciunas is kind of just fallen off. And we've mentioned on a few pods, but, they need something out of him, and it just hasn't been there.
He's just slow. He's just very slow.
Yeah, and it's like last year in the postseason when he went out, it was like such a big blow, and people were like, it would have really helped. And this year they have him, and he has been a non-factor. It's also he's having a bad season, but, Dwayne Casey, I think, mentioned after the game they might go younger in this game, which may help, maybe give them some more energy because they definitely need to change something.
Yeah, I know Patrick Patterson struggled, but I wouldn't mind seeing a lineup with, Ibaka at the center, Patrick Patterson at the 4, and then Tucker, DeRozan, and Lowry. Because Tucker, I really like what Tucker brings Toronto with that grit and that the fact that he plays very good defense and he's a bigger body that can kind of match up against LeBron to a degree. Obviously not for a full 48 minutes, but he can definitely give some stretches that can limit LeBron to the best of his abilities.
Yeah, and he just gives them that extra edge and toughness, and that's something they need, that extra energy too. But on to the next series, and this one was a crazy game 1, Houston and San Antonio. Houston blew San Antonio out of the water in game 1. They've got contributions from everybody. They hit 22 threes, and San Antonio didn't have much offense. What did you think about game 1? What do you think about tonight?
Not surprised. I've been on the Houston bandwagon for a little bit now. I still believe that they're the biggest threat to the Warriors to make the finals. I'm not saying they're going to beat the Warriors, but I do think they're the biggest threat. And game 1 against the Spurs was a perfect example. This team has the same offensive capabilities as the Golden State Warriors, and they just fit with this new era of basketball. They have 3-point shooters up and down the roster. Almost everybody besides Clint Capella and Nene shoot threes on this team. Sam Decker's finally getting healthy. Lou Williams and Eric Gordon are both playing like they won 6th Man of the Year currently. And then the fact that James Harden, it looks like his ankle injury is a little bit better than what happened than the last couple games against OKC. And when he's passing the ball and he doesn't really have to be their go-to scorer, that just makes him even more dangerous. And then when you flip over to the Spurs, you're not going to win when your starting center is David Lee. I'm sorry. Like, I understand Pop has to play what he's got, but, David Lee is slow, can't really play in today's basketball. Pau Gasol's older. He can't play those giant minutes anymore. And LaMarcus Aldridge is a complete buster at this point.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty high in Houston as well. I picked them to win the series. Like you said, they have a lot of offensive firepower. And when like you said too, is when Harden's able to kind of facilitate and pick and choose when he needs to score, and he doesn't have to, pull up all the time or create everything himself and get in the paint, when he just is able to hook up his teammates. And you have guys like Lou Williams out there. You have guys like Eric Gordon, and Ryan Anderson finally got hot last game. They're a really tough team to defend. And like you mentioned on the Spurs on the other side, it was Kawhi is like their offensive threat, and everybody else has kind of been not stepping up. They didn't step up last game. Aldridge has been terrible. He had 4 points and 6 rebounds. I know there was some photos of Tim Duncan talking to him at Spurs practice. Do you expect a big game too, or is he going to continue to struggle in this postseason?
I mean, I don't expect any worse of a game. I don't know how much worse you get from 4 and 6. So yeah, I mean, there were several times in that game where he had a wide open look and he just didn't shoot it. He would either,
and there used to be shots that he would shoot, instantly.
Yeah,
from the mid range was his game, and he would dominate. And now he's just like, I don't know if I want to shoot the ball.
Yeah, he was a catch and shoot. You would just dish it off to him on the elbow, and he would just pop it. And he doesn't seem to want to do that. I don't know if that's just because of he doesn't have faith in the shot, or if he sees something else that we don't see, and he just wants to try and make another play. I know that when he's on the court, the Rockets really abused him in pick and roll situations. They really wanted to attack Aldridge and get him switching back and forth, and it worked really well. I mean, it helped Ryan Anderson get going, like you mentioned. Clint Capella had a huge game because they kept bringing Aldridge out to the 3-point line, and Clint Capella was pretty much just matched up one-on-one with David Lee or Dedmon, and he was feasting. I think he went 8 for 10 with 13 rebounds in game 1.
Yeah, he was big, and he struggled in the OKC series, but even early in that game, he got some easy shots. Harden was setting him up, and like you said, they abused the Spurs bigs in pick and roll, and I felt like that was something they were going to do going into the series, is the Spurs just don't have enough great defensive big men, especially with somebody like James Harden, who loves to attack slow bigs that, can't handle him. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs went younger and they played maybe some more smaller lineups, some more Kyle Anderson, some more Jonathan Simmons, something to change it up and kind of match up with the pace and speed, because the bigs aren't going to cut it.
Yeah, and it was really fun. I'm not sure if you saw this. When after the first quarter, David Lee got abused on one rotation, and Pop was yelling at him and just like, get on the bench, just like get on the. It's really funny. I'll send you.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's like David Lee. He could be a nice piece off the bench to give you some pop, but like against this team, they're just going to expose him, and like I said, they're going to expose the big. So it's like,
yeah. And if you're David Lee, it's kind of like, what do you expect from me? Like, come on.
Yeah, he's never been a good defensive player, even when he was young. So it's like,
yeah,
at this age and this point, it's just, I don't really know what the Spurs are going to do. I wouldn't be surprised if this series ends a little bit sooner than I expected.
Yeah, I picked Rockets in 6, but if this is the limited offensive power the Spurs have, Trevor Ariza too, he didn't get a lot of credit, but he played really good defense on Kawhi.
And he had a big first quarter scoring wise too.
Yeah, he didn't give Kawhi much room to operate. He made sure there was very little air between Kawhi and him. Almost every time you saw Kawhi catch the ball, Trevor Ariza was pushing up on him to make him make a quick decision.
Yeah, and they did a good job. He did a good job disrupting Kawhi's rhythm early and forcing him to a lot of like you said, mid-range tough shots, hands in his face. So,
and a lot of double teams. They really wanted anyone besides Kawhi to beat them, similar to what Popovich used to do against LeBron teams. The Rockets used that against the Spurs and Kawhi. They took out their best offensive player and made other guys like Danny Green and Tony Parker try and beat them, and both those guys just had bad shooting nights.
Other than Aldridge, who needs to step up for the Spurs to make this a series?
Tony Parker. That last game against the Grizzlies when Tony Parker had 27 points or 29 points, and he was fast. He had some pump under his legs. He's a little road runner. Tony Parker needs to be Tony Parker from 5 years ago. He needs to turn the clock back. When he's aggressive, it really puts pressure on the defense. He can really lighten up things for Kawhi, who can get some easy dish outs.
Yeah, and he's going to have a tough time, too, with Patrick Beverley on him. So I agree. I think it's the point guard, maybe not just Tony Parker. I think Patty Mills is another person on this team who can give them some more scoring, some more three-point shooting, because they just need somebody to create, ease it up for Kawhi a little bit. And I'd like to see Jonathan Simmons got some more burn last game. I'll be interested to see if Pop goes with him a little bit more in this series.
Yeah, I would like to see more Jonathan Simmons. I like what he brings to the Spurs.
He brings, that defense, that energy, that athleticism, especially something you need against a fast Houston team.
Everybody needs a spark plug off the bench.
Exactly. So what is your pick for this game tonight?
I'm going to say I want to say San Antonio because I can't imagine San Antonio getting blown out 2 games in a row at home. But I'm gonna say Houston. I'm gonna say this is more of a game where you see more James Harden. Maybe the role players aren't as good because they're on the road, but the game where your superstar kind of carries you home. So I'm gonna say the Rockets win this, like 110-102.
Yeah, everything is telling me to pick the Spurs right now, but like part of me wants to pick the Rockets just because it's like that was a huge game. But I think I'm gonna stay safe and go with the Spurs. I don't know how they're going to win. I think Pop's going to have to make some huge adjustments. Like I said, get rid of some of those bigs. But what's your pick for Cleveland-Toronto tonight?
I'm going to go Cleveland, and I'm going to go pretty much 15-point win, 115-100.
Yeah, I'm going Cavs as well. I think they'll probably hold the lead most of the game, if not the whole thing.
Yeah, I see. I thought Toronto was going to make that like a 6-game series. I'm starting to believe that's another series that Cleveland might finish in 5.
Yeah, I'm thinking 5 for that one. I think Toronto is able to pull one away at home, in front of the home crowd. They do play better at home too, so but it's going to be quick. Both of these series really could be quick. It'll be interesting. The only series that I feel confident about going deep is Washington and Boston.
I completely agree. It's funny, going into this round, I kind of thought every series besides the Warriors was going to go 6. And that opinion of mine has changed drastically since the first games.
But who knows? I think the Spurs easily can turn it around and make this one a deep series. So Washington and Boston, Houston, San Antonio are only hope because I agree with you. Cleveland, Golden State are pretty much already over.
Yeah, you surely shouldn't ever bet against the Spurs. I mean, they've been to this stage of the playoffs so many times, so many years for a reason. But
exactly. But they have had some playoff failures the last few years.
Yeah, they lost what was it a couple years ago? They lost the Grizzlies when they were a 2 seed. The Grizzlies were a 7 seed.
Yep, and then they got knocked out in the first round by the Clippers a few years ago. And then last year, the OKC series was the series they were in, and then I think it was Game 6, and they just didn't show up and they got blown out.
Yeah.
So been some major disappointments in San Antonio the last few postseasons. But that wraps it up for today. As always, thank you guys for listening. Let us know what you think on Twitter at OTG Basketball. Also, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And thank you, Kory, for hopping on.
No problem, Nick. Everybody enjoy the playoff basketball.